Good evening and welcome to the Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting for June 18th, 2008. Before we get started, could you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Bravo, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Lemo?
Here.
Vice Chair Price?
Here.
Commissioner McKay?
Here.
Commissioner McMahon and Commissioner Gregory are absent tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Bravo. We'll now open up for public comments.
There are none?
Any person who wishes, there are no public comments?
No, there aren't.
Okay. Any person who wishes to speak regarding an item on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction during public comments or portion of the agenda must file a public speaker card. If there's none being filed, I'm assuming that the people here do not want to file a card, and therefore, is it necessary for me to read the balance?
Yes, he should read that.
Okay, any person who wishes to speak on a specific agenda item must file a public speaker card before the specific item is called. Persons addressing the Traffic Commission are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. Under state law, issues presented or introduced under public comments can have no action and will be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division Manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. Any person who wishes to speak on an agenda item or public hearing must file a speaker card with the recording secretary before the item or the hearing is called. Pursuant to Section 1-4.02 of the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission shall file a written appeal and pay a $200 appeal fee with the city clerk's office within 14 calendar days of our decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The $200 fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission's decision. And with that, we'll move forward with our summary notes from our meeting of May 21st, 2008. And as after the commissioners have had a chance to review any questions or comments or changes, and then we'll entertain a motion to accept.
We do not need a motion on that.
Thank you. It's only been 1 month and already I've fallen off here. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or changes to those? Okay, and with that, we'll move to, hello?
Oh, we're so crowded tonight.
No, just to be, if you would please file a request for public comments with the secretary. In the meantime, we'll move on with this agenda item here. Go ahead.
When we're on just for Mrs. Bravo, Banyan Elementary School is Banyan. And it's on the last page. You spelled it. Someone spelled it O-N.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Vice Chair Price. We are going to go back to public comments, and if you could file that card with Secretary Bravo, we're going to hold off and wait for you. And if you would, when you step to the podium, if you would give us your name and your city of residence, please.
Hi, I'm Holly LaRue, and I live in Thousand Oaks. Can I come over here? Yeah. And I don't know how your format is, if I can ask questions, or can I just, do I just make a statement? Because really I have some questions. Is that Is that okay? Or-
Normally what you would do is ask questions in your public comments, and either later in the meeting, if there's something that can be answered simply, or at our next meeting, they will be addressed.
Okay. My questions are having to do with the bus system, and it just seems timely now that we would have a really effective bus system. Is it impossible to have buses going up and down, say, Teal Boulevard and maybe Moore Park, Westlake, and Urbs, just all day? Do we have the buses to do that? And I see that we have buses, but I don't see people using them. I've traveled a little bit, and I know that in other areas everyone uses the buses. This is probably really naive. Everything I'm saying has probably been said many, many times before. But I've asked around a little bit, and the answers aren't really making sense to me. So my question is just, do we have enough buses? And now with gas being so expensive, is it possible to actually use them in a way that the people in Thousand Oaks could just hop on one and go? It's probably much more complicated than that, and it takes a whole lot of votes and money and everything else, but it would be nice to do something now and then work out the details later. And does anything ever really work like that? So that's my question, and can I follow up with somebody? Is there a name of someone that I can contact and maybe really talk about it? Maybe not in this situation, but back and forth, have a conversation about that.
First of all, I know that is a question that would be probably addressed in somewhat of a global fashion by our traffic engineering manager. Maybe not at this meeting, but as a follow-up. And I do know from my experience on the boulevard that it's sort of a chicken or egg thing, which comes first, demand or supply. As you stated in your comments, we're having a very difficult time getting anyone to ride the bus.
Before, maybe not so much now.
That could very well be, so I do know that those are the issues that they deal with. Is that something that you would follow up with over time, or how does that work, Mr. Hallowell?
Yes, absolutely. We have a transit manager here at the city that's in charge of operating the system, and from the speaker card, I'll have your name and your number on there, and I'll have him call you if you want to have a conversation about it.
And who's that?
Roy Myers.
Roy Myers.
Myers. And he's very familiar with the transit system and all the studies that have been done before, and the ridership information that's current, the current ridership, and the routes of the system and everything. So all your questions will be answered, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hallowell. Hold on just one second. Commissioner Price?
Yes, the transportation forum that I attended a month or so ago, was that meeting either memorialized in writing, or is it available on the internet? Because I think a lot of the answers to the questions that she has might have been answered there. That might give her something to look at as well.
Yes, that's a good point. You can go on the city's website, toaks.org, and go through the city console, and you can, through PDF files, you can look at all the agendas, the past ones and the current ones.
So the date of that meeting was...
We can probably get that date back. We can get that back to you in the follow-up comments from either Mr. Hallowell or Mr. Myers.
Okay.
Thank you. With no other public comments present, I think what we're going to do first is go to our engineers' reports, and we will continue with item 6B, as we're not prepared for item 6A yet. So we'll turn things over to Mr. Hallowell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lema. I'll be giving this report.
Sorry, Mr. Mishenko, I'm sorry.
Yes, this is a follow-up report dating back to March of this year, where we were asked by the Traffic Commission to look at the feasibility of traffic circles along North Park Street, Scenic Park Street at two T intersections. We have a PowerPoint here up on the large screen. So I'll be scrolling through that so you can take a look at some of the pictures and have some comments. Basically, what we're recommending is that since this is an information item, we're just going to proceed with the prior recommendation that was made at the March meeting, which is a step-by-step approach to try to calm traffic in that neighborhood, where we're going to come back again in 1 year with a report. We're going to do some after studies. We gave you some information on volume, shortcut traffic, speeds in the neighborhood, so we're going to follow through that course and come back and give you the before and after information, and then at that point, that would probably be the appropriate time if you would like to make a recommendation on traffic circles for this neighborhood. We're basically looking at the feasibility as to whether or not, can they go in? We're trying to answer that question for you. The two intersections that we're looking at, again, are the T intersection of Parkview Drive at North Park Street, which is a northerly entrance into the neighborhood. And the second intersection is Scenic Park Drive at Willow Park Court, which is a midpoint intersection. Willow Park Court is a small cul-de-sac, maybe about 4 homes. At the March meeting, stop sign control was requested by the residents for both of those intersections. The warrants were not fully satisfied, and so therefore the commission went with the staff recommendation, which was to complete a improvement plan and then come back. Here's a map that shows the layout of the neighborhood. Again, the first intersection is Parkview Drive, which is the northerly entrance, and then Willow Park Court is the sort of a midpoint intersection where the road bends 90 degrees. And it's a sort of was a shortcut traffic based on the license plate survey numbers that we gave you to Los Cerritos Middle School. I believe the shortcut percentages were about 30% of the total traffic during the school peak periods. Here's a photograph of the first intersection, Scenic Park at Willow Park. This is looking to the west. Second photo here is looking at the other intersection, North Park Street, Parkview Drive, also looking to the west. What I'll do right now is more or less go through and sort of refresh your memories. I'm assuming that some of you have gone through the training that Cal Poly has offered as far as traffic calming and talking about traffic devices, and so some of this is probably already familiar to you. But basically traffic circles, they're raised circular. It's a raised circular island in the center of an intersection, roughly 20 to 25 feet in diameter, which creates what we call a horizontal deflection. It takes a vehicle that's traveling in a straight path and diverts it slightly from that straight path, causing the vehicle to slow down at that particular point. Traffic circles are not intended to slow traffic. The main intent is to regulate right-of-way at an intersection. But then there is a benefit where they do slow traffic at that particular location. Typically, when agencies put these circles in, they follow an incremental approach where they put the circle in step by step before it's permanent. First step would be start with a painted circular island in the middle of the street to show where the circle is. Maybe have some delineators, some pylons, and this photograph that's shown here shows something similar to what you would have in probably a first step approach to get the residents used to a traffic circle, and then once the neighborhood has had time to adjust to the circle, then you would move on to a permanent installation. As far as the positive aspects of traffic circles, mid-block speeds are reduced by up to about 10%, which is about 3 to 5 miles per hour in most situations. Since vehicles are traveling in one direction, they travel in a counterclockwise motion through the intersection. It reduces usually the right angle and approach turns at an intersection, if that's a common type of collision pattern that occurs. Thirdly, they do replace four-way stop sign control. Again, these two intersections we're looking at are uncontrolled intersections.
Mr. Machiko, quick question, because this was going through my mind. What is the number one reason, in your opinion, that these would be used instead of a four-way stop? What would be the benefit of using a traffic circle instead of a four-way stop? Because I was under the impression that both of them are primarily designed to control right-of-way. What would be the reason someone would make the decision to say, let's do a traffic circle instead of a four-way stop?
Well, usually if there's a collision pattern, this is from talking to other agencies, if there's a collision pattern where there's a right angle, where in a typical intersection vehicles are traveling at right angles and they're turning opposite one another, so you have approach turn and right angle collision. So if that's the main pattern that happens at an intersection, that's probably the main reason why you want to put in a circle.
Thank you. Thanks.
And then lastly, another positive thing about the circles is that with the landscaping that you put in the center, it enhances the aesthetics of the neighborhood. As far as the cons of putting in circles, just like any traffic device, we're going to have to put in warning signs and pavement markings to make sure motorists are aware of what's happening and what's in the street, so it may detract from the aesthetics. Although the landscaping is added to enhance aesthetics, there's the markings that are added. Pedestrians and bicyclists must adjust to maybe a change in their crossing patterns, because when vehicles typically go through an intersection at right angles or just traveling straight through, now they're going in a circular direction, and maybe the vehicle path now encroaches into the path of where a pedestrian normally crosses the intersection. There's also a loss of street parking at the intersection, so that there's sufficient room to have the circle in the center, and also to allow the movement of vehicles through the intersection. This is typically at a T intersection we're going to find a loss of parking. Motorists find that, or motorists may travel the wrong way through an intersection if they find that it's difficult to make a left turn, or they just want to save travel time and they don't want to travel all the way around, so they'll cut through the traffic circle. May increase certain collision patterns until drivers adjust to this new feature. Emergency response time could be increased because vehicles now have to slow down at the intersection. And then a big aspect that you should consider is that emergency vehicles, fire department, they are affected because it affects their ability to turn at an intersection, and that's definitely going to slow them up. Lastly, the installation cost is rather high, up to $30,000 per circle. As far as the design considerations, what we look at to determine whether or not they work at an intersection, we're looking at things like the visibility. You know, as you approach the intersection, do you have a clear line of sight as you approach the intersection? Is there street lighting already provided, or does it need to be provided during the evening hours? Also, if you're putting these devices in these circles, are you putting them in series or just at isolated points? Because typically what you need to do is, if you're going to try to slow traffic, you're going to need to put these devices in series so you have uniform speeds throughout the entire roadway. If there's manholes or utility valve covers, such as the two intersections we have here, it could be problematic for maintenance when they work out in the street. And also, again, back to the safety issue, if they're going to go in, they're probably recommended to go in if there's a collision pattern of right angle and approach turn type collisions. Here's a photograph that basically we took and tried to overlay a traffic circle to simulate Parkview Drive at North Park Street. The black lines show you the two predominant vehicle patterns. Southbound is a right turn, and eastbound is a left turn. Basically, those are non-conflicting movements today. So currently, if you put in a circle there, probably would not have any impact on speeds as they make those maneuvers. There is no street lighting. If you look at the intersection, it's probably 2 houses down. Either side is the closest street light to that intersection. And on the south side, you'll notice that you'll probably have to put in red curb or no parking zones to make sure that vehicles have adequate clearance to get around this, the circle and the intersection. There's a couple other things about that intersection that probably needs to be mentioned, is that the collision history there have been no reported collisions of any type over the last 2 to 3 years. So, you know, again, that does not seem to warrant that would be that would benefit that intersection in terms of right-of-way control. And the issue about neighborhood support, when these devices do go in, we should probably have good neighborhood support to make sure that you know, they're accepted and people drive through them properly. The other intersection here is Willow Park Street. At Scenic Park Street, again, the black line showing the predominant vehicle patterns through the intersection. If you look to the northern side, if you notice how people, or the motorists, when they drive, they're going to have to drive sort of in that area where pedestrians would normally be crossing the street. So that's something to consider. Here there's about 4 utility covers. One's a manhole, so that might be problematic at some point. And then again, here the red curb shows where we'd probably have to eliminate parking in front of 2 homes in order for traffic to flow uniformly and smoothly through this location. There is street lighting at this intersection down at the south, I guess that would be the southwest corner. And another issue to consider here, again, this does not have any collisions reported over the last 2 to 3 years. So recommendation in short is that we're not recommending circles at these 2 locations. Feasibility-wise, they could probably work, but the things that you should consider is that these 2 circles alone wouldn't achieve the slowing that people are looking for in this neighborhood. You'd probably have to add other measures, maybe other circles at the other nearby intersections to make sure that there's a constant zone of speed throughout the neighborhood rather than just 2 isolated slow points. And also, we'd like to get back to the recommendation, which is in 1 year we're going to come back to the commission and report back on the after study. So we'd like to make sure we know, we'd like to see whether or not what we've done over the 1 year period has made any change in traffic patterns out there. And right here, this slide shows the 6 items that the commission had recommended at the March meeting. And that concludes this report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Macheko. Commissioners, any questions or comments or clarifications needed? Commissioner McKay.
I mean, it's just a curiosity to me. What is the benefit of the incremental approach? I mean, is it really to get the neighborhood used to it so they don't drive over it when you've put in an expensive traffic circle, or is it to see if they buy into it and it works before you, so you could take it out without much expense? I just was curious more than anything.
Yes, it's more or less that you have to see whether or not the neighborhood buys into it and they adjust to it properly, rather than having a $30,000 project go in and then all of a sudden it has to come back out because it wasn't successful.
That makes sense.
Quick question. I see that we have a history of, well, we have no history whatsoever of collisions there, reported collisions, and low traffic volume, and that doesn't support the need for this. But when I look at the diagrams, it almost seems like we'd be increasing the risk of collision by putting a traffic circle in. Does that support your opinion, or am I going too far there?
I guess you can make that case where you might increase likelihood of a collision, since number one, it's not a device that motors typically encounter in Thousand Oaks, so there's that period of adjustment, and during that period is the time at which we'd be very careful and make careful observations as far as what's going to make sure we have proper signage and provide adequate training to the residents. We'd have to do some type of outreach to the residents in that neighborhood to make sure they know the rules.
I guess when I look at the diagram, Exhibit F, it seems to me that when someone's shortcutting through an intersection, that is somebody that clearly understands how a traffic circle works. Their intent is to shortcut it, and when I look at that diagram, it seems to me that's where the risk may exist of increasing intersections or increasing accidents at that intersection, just simply because people want to get a shorter way around it and they're crossing paths of travel that they probably shouldn't cross. That's what I meant by my question. It almost seems like you could, at an intersection that has no history of collisions, you could start to create a history. I wanted to make sure I wasn't jumping too far with that assumption. Commissioner McKay and then Chair Price. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
What is the width on this street? When I say this street, I'm speaking of Scenic Park.
They're about 40 feet in width, and then the cross streets I think are about 36 Street. They're a little bit narrower.
And the traffic circle that you've superimposed on the map here, what is the diameter of that? In other words, what does it leave between that traffic circle and the curb? It doesn't look to me like a lot of room.
Yeah, that
Barely the width of a car.
Yeah, the diagram on either Exhibit E or I believe it was D in the report are not to scale. Basically, you can make the diameter any diameter you want based on the needs or the width of the intersection. So, you can make the circles as small as 20 feet, sometimes even smaller. But depending on the width, yeah, we didn't look in the detail, that level of detail at this point.
I might want to add that it's sort of a balancing act. So the wider the diameter of the traffic circle, the greater the reduction in horizontal deflection of the vehicle from a straight path. So therefore, the slower the vehicle may go around the traffic circle, but then also that pinches the side areas, so that could create new problems that with driving close to the curb or over the cross gutters on the T part of the intersection, and so it's always a balance. And so finding that right formula which works for a particular location is what's key in this. And so that's another reason why if you were to construct one of these, you would do a temporary mock-up to see how well it worked and then adjust as it goes along.
Commissioner McKay.
In May, after we made this, asked about this traffic circle, I went to Chico, California, where they've installed a couple of traffic circles. And it is a college town, so they have some interesting driving patterns there anyway. But the traffic circles, I didn't see them there as real traffic calming measures. They seem to be very interesting places for the college students to drive. They put them in some neighborhoods, clearly where the neighborhoods were frustrated with the college kids in hope of calming, but it didn't seem to have that effect that they were hoping for. So I wasn't overly impressed with the outcome. I didn't get a chance to go to their city hall to talk to them because I was there over a weekend. Then, having traveled some in London and the world famous roundabouts over there, those always have just been plain scary. So I just have never seen it work well, and so I didn't know if you guys have any experience someplace we could go or see where they work really well, since I've never seen it.
Well, in our town, we do have 2 to 4 traffic circles already, and we've watched how they operate, and there is some shortcutting that occurs. I don't know what they're more of a identity feature for the neighborhoods than more than anything. People say, well, you go up to the traffic circle and turn right.
Right.
But
I grew up in the city of Orange, which the center of town is a great big traffic circle, and that was the same thing. It was an identity thing. So just curious.
I'm sure that there are applications where it may be a benefit to have a traffic circles, but each case needs to be looked at in a case-by-case basis to see where the benefits and where the disadvantages are, because they are not perfect cures to everything, and there could be more problems developed by putting a traffic circle in. The ones we're talking about, not the roundabouts, but the residential traffic circles, the little ones, than existed before. So trying to solve one form of a traffic motorist behavior problem, you may create others that we didn't have before.
Well, it seems expensive, too, for a 10% reduction.
Vice Chair Price.
Is it fair to say that these might be better applied to newer neighborhoods that are being planned, where you can actually, instead of trying to fit something into an already existing neighborhood, where we have streets that are of a particular width? And is that fair to say?
Yes, you're correct. The 2 larger residential traffic circles that we have in town were done that way. They were built in when the roads were constructed, so that they fit the roads right and they have the right dimensions and everything. Anytime there's a retrofit, it's always, like I was saying before, balancing the benefit, the diameter of the circle, the benefit from that, and the disadvantages of that. So, right, retrofitting is always more difficult.
I have a question that you've answered at least 2 or 3 times before that I'm familiar with, but I got to ask it again. Maybe we've got 1 or 2 new people watching. Maybe they've got nothing else to do during the summer and they're watching this again. Since there will be no Laker basketball for the next couple of nights. But here's my question. It seems now, after 2.5 years on the commission, that there are a lot of people who come down with a speed concern. And realistically, what people think is a speed constraint may be like a stop sign or even a traffic circle. And as we go on learning, that really doesn't net you much. If someone were to say to you, what is the number 1 device that's used to lower speed, other than having an officer there charging people for the right to speed, what device, or is every application different when it comes to speed as well?
Well, generally, probably police enforcement, when it's there, is probably the number 1. Then after that, then you have physical devices that you can do to the street, physical changes to try to alter behavior, and that's what traffic calming, that term, comes from, trying to calm the traffic to drive slower. And there's been 20 different types of things to use, and different agencies have used different things at different times with various results. Generally, most of them are about the same. But I think the number 1 item that stands above all of them is the horizontal deflection, which would come about with a speed hump installation. And that is probably the one that is the most effective in getting people to slow down. And even that, nowadays, with better suspension on some of the newer vehicles, people can take those a little bit faster now. And we use 3.5-inch hump is our standard here in Thousand Oaks, but maybe even that at some point may have to be even higher to accommodate for people being able to, with better cars, driving over them faster. So we're not getting that same kind of reduction, say, we got in 1985 when we put in the first one.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? With that, I think we'll probably defer item 6A to our next regularly scheduled meeting based upon the convenience of the city attorney, and move along with item number 7, which is our status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. And with that, I believe we'll go to Mr. Hallowell.
The status report, item number 7, is the item that went to the City Council on May 27th, and it was regarding the crossing guard program, and they approved the recommendation that Traffic Commission had, basically maintaining 17 locations that met the warrants or the criteria, and another 14 that didn't meet it, and they reduced the number of crossing guards at other locations, 5 other locations. So now it's consistent with standards.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions or comments on item number 7? Commissioner McKay?
Just, there was the article in the paper, and I do know there is some conversation going on about that, but we'll just wait and see if it comes back to us, I guess.
Thank you. With that, we have agenda item number 8, where the commission referrals from May 21st, 2008, and there are none listed. So then we'll move on with our work program and commission, which is attached item number 9. These are tentative agenda items for future meetings: our bicycle advisory team quarterly status report, our Lynn Road status report, our school site council, and the Upper Ranch Road speed hump report.
And our whether we're going to meet in July?
I'm sorry?
Isn't it also whether we're going to meet in July or not?
And yes, it's not part of our work program, but also to decide and to vote if the Traffic Commission will meet at the July 16th meeting. And I think they go a little hand in hand when you look at the fact that we have 2 items at our status reports and 2 other items, and whether or not those items can best be dealt with in our September meeting, because we are dark in August. And so let's open that up for discussion with the Commission now.
My question would be the Upper Ranch Road, because I don't want to keep them waiting, but I don't think we would be in a position. You were going to send out letters, I think, to the neighborhood there, and I don't think we would be ready in July for that one anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Typically, we try not to have a public meeting in the summer vacation months because some people can make the meeting, other people can't, and so I think that this item would be best served the people there if we had it in September or October.
Based upon timing, I'd like to suggest that maybe a better time to have that meeting is in October, because it turns out our first meeting in September is with all the back-to-school nights and things like that, and so it may be inconvenient for the public to show up. I don't know which way to go on that. I don't know if we can be prepared for September, if we want to do it earlier, or if we think there's a better chance for public participation by waiting till October. Where do we take a temperature on that?
I think that probably part of the mail-in ballot process that we're going to use, we'll ask the people when they want the meeting. And we'll
Perfect.
give them 3 choices, and they can check them off, and the majority will choose that night.
Perfect. That's great. So that's definitely for a future item. School site council probably should follow the same. Is there anything that you would say is pertinent that needs to be dealt with in July? And did you need me to do something first?
We would need that in the form of a motion if you want to cancel the July meeting.
Before that happens, I think, yes, we'll definitely do that. I'm wondering if when we look at our work program, with 2 out of 4 of the items being status reports, and 1 item, 2 items for certain that we probably would not want to do during vacation time, is there anything pressing that we may not be aware of, or that we're not assessing properly here, that you think would require a meeting in July?
As of today, there is not.
Okay, so with that, we'll open it up for commission discussion, questions, comments, or entertain a motion regarding our July 16th Traffic Commission meeting. Commissioner McKay.
I move that we cancel our July 16th Traffic Commission meeting and meet again in September.
No. Do you have any questions or comments on that? With that, can we take a roll call vote on that, please?
We have a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next meeting will be in the appropriate Wednesday in September. That being said, we'll now move on with item number 10, our engineer status reports. Let's just pause for 1 second as we're catching up with a new system tonight. And for the engineer status report, we will go to Mr. Halliwell.
We have, item 10 has basically 3 different items that we have every month or every meeting time on 3 items: Lynn Road traffic control updates, the bicycle advisory team updates, and school site safety team work. And if I guess I always bring this up, but I either go one by one and I can go into a detail on it, but you've had a chance to have this and look at it, or if I can just answer any questions if you have any questions. So either way, the pleasure of the commission. I'll be glad
Before we go to questions, I just want to point out something that strikes me in regards to the Lynn Road status report. There were basically 9 items that we asked our department to work on. 6 of them have already been completed, and the other 3 are not completed because they literally have to be in process. And I think that is a very good job. And so I just want to make sure that when we have the benefit of seeing the report, 6 out of 9 of the items are completed and 3 are in process. So on Lynn Road, we are seeing, on the plan, we're seeing some progress, and I would also hope that people are seeing some progress out on Lynn Road. With that, questions, comments on any of the status reports or the reports before us? Commissioner McKay, then we'll go to Vice Chair Price.
My only comment is on the school safety team is just because we did it at the last minute, we did go visit Thousand Oaks High School. And after we did Glenwood, we went, and it was kind of a last minute thing to go visit a high school. And I want to assure the parents that drive unsafely at their schools that they have transferred that behavior to the students at Thousand Oaks High School, because we were visiting the student parking lot, and it is sometimes a scary place. We met with the principal and our usual team to see what, if anything, might be done at the high school to make the traffic flow better there. And really for what they have, other than, trying to make the parking lot bigger and allowing for more parking where there currently is none, it works about as well as it's going to work until the buses can get taken off of that site and they can create some more student parking for the kids there. They need to freshen up some signs that are pretty sun faded and, a few little odd items like that. But just as a reminder again to parents that they do teach their children how to drive every day when they take them to school, and they reflect that behavior when they drive themselves in high school. That's my mantra every month.
Thank you. Vice Chair Price.
I'm recalling that one of the items on the Lynn Road implementation plan was to look into the ability for the homeowners there on Lynn Road to increase the wall height. And do we know if that's been resolved yet?
Yes, our communication with our planning department was that was going to go to the planning commission this summer, and that probably did occur, but I have not talked to the planning people yet, so I don't know what the results were.
that side of Lynn Road, is that not county there?
What side is this?
Ventura County area, the west side of Lynn Road there? Or
Okay, the right-of-way of Lynn Road is all in the city. So the west side of Lynn Road, which would be the property line of Lynn Road, and the properties basically south of Camino Manzanas and west of the right-of-way line of Lynn Road is in the county. So like Calle
I guess I'm wondering if the city of Thousand Oaks Planning Department is the appropriate venue for that, since those homeowners and those properties are in the county. The city doesn't maintain those walls, correct? It's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain those walls. So should the Ventura County, some agency, be looking into that? Or does the city have some impact on those wall heights there?
Well, what I recall is that the people that asked to have their walls increased were in the city. And so those people that asked to have them increased were in the city, so that's why we had it.
Right, but the people that were down here were actually in the city, and I'm not sure, but I think what you're talking about is very similar to what's referred to as your sidewalk. It's your sidewalk and it's part of your property, but the city dictates that, where you're saying the county might there. What I'd like to be able to do is can we just add on our next status report where that stands, if in fact how many people who made the request were actually in the county, and whether that would be a county issue or a city issue.
I mean, I know that the Hendricksons, the one who kept referring to the dead fish and the dead frogs and wanted to hire the wild, I know that she lives in the county. She lives in Lynn Ranch, and I know that's county property. So, I know for a fact that person was a county person, and I know some of the other people lived further up Lynn Road where it's city. So I know there was a mixture of both. So I don't know how it worked out, but I do know that the Hendricksons live in the county. So I can ask him how it worked out for him and call you.
Okay, from the meetings, I remember there was maybe one or two people that had that concern about raising the height of the wall to reduce the noise, and then that was their purpose. And both those people were in the city. So,
Vice Chair Price.
No, I mean, I agree. I know that is true, but I think there was also a woman here who lived in the Lynn Ranch area, which, in my understanding, is county. And that being the case, and she was one who wanted to be able to raise her wall height, but didn't believe she could. That is clearly in the county, and I would think that the county would be responsible for saying whether or not they could have an increased wall height there. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I want to make sure that if we're dealing with it, we deal with all of it at once, rather than deal with one issue now and then send it over to the county at a later date for them to look at it.
I think that was all handled at once. It was shortly after the meetings that the city had in the city committee. There was a county resident committee that was chaired by county officials, and they discussed the issues of what our committee decided to do and how that relates to them. And out of that came some improvements on at Lynn Road and one of the side streets and some other things at Laredo, Calle Laredo. So I think that was probably handled. The county is fully aware of what ours were, and they looked at our recommendations, our 9 items, and came up with their own work plan.
Okay, thank you.
Are any other questions or comments on the 3 status reports that are that are mentioned there? Okay. That being said, we'll move to item 11. We'll adjourn this Traffic Transportation Commission meeting, and our next meeting will be held at 7:30. on Wednesday, September 17th, here in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. With that, thank you and have a good summer.